States. How are you feeling right now?
Amazing! The best day of my life!
America has decided.
Just look around you. This is what democracy looks like.
We made history, Kamala, yes!
Over 70 million people still voted for Trump, and they're still out there.
We won't stop.
We need to recount the votes.
This is a moment of joy.
2020 is now the best year.
This is a CBS News special, The Election of Joe Biden. Reporting tonight from CBS News Election Headquarters in Times Square, Norah O'Donnell.
Good evening, and you are looking live at celebrations in New York City tonight. After a week of waiting and wondering in ballot counting, America has decided. Joe Biden has been elected the next president of the United States. Incredible crowds across America, from here in Times Square to the streets outside of the White House. Voters are cheering. At the Biden campaign headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware, supporters of the president-elect and his running mate, Kamala Harris, are also partying. The new president-elect and vice president-elect will be speaking there shortly, giving the acceptance speeches they've waited their whole lives to give. And there'll be fireworks, we're told.
Gotta have fireworks.
And more than just rhetorical ones, the real ones. Welcome once again to our CBS News election headquarters. And as we come on the air tonight, the 77-year-old former vice president is facing the biggest challenge of his political life, leading a country in the grips of a deadly coronavirus pandemic that is also deeply divided. And that's because while CBS News and other news organizations have projected that he is the next president, the current president disagrees. President Trump tonight still has not conceded the election and is vowing to fight the results in courtrooms in 4 states. We should note that more than 70 million Americans voted for Mr. Trump. So tonight is both historic and also unprecedented. I'm joined by our powerhouse political team, Gayle King, John Dickerson, Nancy Cordes, Ed O'Keefe, and Major Garrett. And as we wait for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to speak, we should talk about this incredibly historic moment, as now the president-elect Joe Biden is talking about trying to restore civility and stability.
I was looking at the 74 days between now and when he moves into the finest home in public housing. And he has probably been in that house more than any other person who hasn't actually lived in there. Now he lives there, and the to-do list is very long, and 74 days seems like a very short period of time to get on top of all the challenges he'll face.
We're watching the motorcade of now the president-elect, which has grown in size as he is surrounded by U.S. Secret Service, and all that entails to protect the next leader of the free world. And Gayle, there is, while there is disappointment among President Trump's supporters and Republicans, there is also a sense of euphoria in this country.
I call it unbridled exuberance. It's like, Norah, the country's having a nationwide block party. You can go from city to city to city, and for the most part, see people just jumping out of their skins. I was just there on the corner of 44th and 8th, 44th and Broadway, asking a police officer, so how do you think, how's it going? He goes, the night is young, but I haven't seen this many people this happy since a Yankees championship, which I think sort of...
a few years in this town.
Yeah, which I think really sort of sums it up. I mean, you talked about civility. Most people are wearing their masks, some people are not, but people are being very respectful and just very happy and embracing of one another on Times Square, which is huge at this particular time.
Yeah,
you feel it. The joy is palpable out there.
2020 has been a difficult year for so many, not only because of the coronavirus, but job losses and others. And so there is a sense for those who support Joe Biden, a sense of jubilation tonight. And that's why they're out in the streets.
It's like the montage that you had when we came in. You know, in the beginning, people were saying 2020, God, let it please be over. Now you heard that young woman say 2020, best year ever. Mm-hmm.
and Nancy, it is historic in so many ways, not only because of what this means, a new president, is every election year, but also because for the first time we will have a woman in the executive office as Kamala Harris is the vice president.
Right. 36 years after the first woman became a vice presidential nominee, Geraldine Ferraro, Kamala Harris is now going to be going to the White House. A lot of firsts there. She is the first woman. She is the first African-American woman, first woman of Indian descent, and we'll have the first gentleman, her husband, Douglas Emhoff, a lawyer. He's also the first spouse of Jewish American descent. And, I think it's meaningful not just because women have broken this glass ceiling that Hillary Clinton talked about so much in 2016, but also because of what it represents for young girls who are now seeing someone who looks like them, who's going to be working there in the White House.
And Ed, the challenges are huge for Joe Biden.
They are tremendous. And we've tallied up in the political unit sort of the day one promises that he's made, things like rejoining the World Health Organization, rescinding the president's Muslim ban, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, sending a bill to Congress to make Dreamers citizens, and an executive order to find the parents of those 545 separated children. Also call world leaders on day one. I mean, it is a tremendous day one. You can only imagine how the first few weeks will go. And it is something that his team has been thinking about and will turn all of its attention to now in the coming days.
And that doesn't even, Condoleezza Rice says all the administrations come in and they say, on day one I will, and she says on day one you won't, because you'll see all the things that are there that you didn't even know about.
And we should know we are going to be hearing from the president-elect and his running mate very shortly. Let's check in with CBS's Nicole Killian. She's there at the Chase Center in Wilmington. And Nicole, tell us about the mood. Tell us about what we expect to hear.
Well, Nora, as you can probably hear behind me, it is a very exuberant and party-like atmosphere as we await President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. We expect Biden to echo many of the themes we have heard from him throughout the campaign and really focus on trying to bring the country together. And that is a message that many people I talk to here say they want to hear tonight, especially after they feel they have lived through 4 years of division. Before his speech tonight, we know the president-elect spent a good part of the day with his family. His granddaughter Naomi tweeted out a picture of him hugging all of his grandkids not long after the race had been called. And a campaign aide tells us that he actually found out he won, much like the rest of us, by watching television. We also know that he spoke with former President Barack Obama today, who congratulated him and Vice President-elect Harris on their historic victory. And while, of course, tonight is all about a celebration, the president-elect is looking at the road ahead and the work ahead. CBS News has learned that he plans to announce his own coronavirus task force on Monday, with more transition announcements expected in the days and weeks to come. Nora?
Nicole Killian, and there you see that large gathering to listen to the president-elect, his motorcade arriving there at the Chase Center, which means we are just moments away from hearing first from the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who will then introduce the president-elect.
We should point out something there, that if you see towards the front near where he will speak, there's several red, white, and blue vehicles that the Biden campaign actually placed there for some of their top supporters. This whole scene is indicative of the kind of rallies he's been holding across the country. Socially distanced rallies that encourage people to stay in or near their vehicles. We'll see how well they do with that tonight. They are encouraged to wear masks. And you can see that there's a larger this is a larger crowd than was there for the convention in August. They held it in the same parking lot here outside a convention center that probably hosts RV shows and garden expos. And it is now, going to be the center of a very important speech watched by the entire world. And Wilmington, Delaware, a city better known for call centers and tax attorneys, is about to join the American imagination alongside Crawford, Texas, Mar-a-Lago, Kennebunkport, because he's lived here his entire political career. He took the 124-mile train ride to and from his home there every day, now to a train station with his name on it, in a state that has its largest rest stop named for him as well. They like their Joe Biden in Delaware. They like him even more tonight.
It's always nice to have a rest stop named after.
It's on my bucket list. It is.
Regardless, Democrat or Republican. The other thing that I noticed about today, guys, is that the weather was so beautiful. Here it is November. It's unseasonably warm on this side of the country. Sometimes during the campaign you saw people all bundled up in coats, but I can't get over how warm. It's almost like Mother Nature was cooperating on this day for all the people would be. And I'm looking at this night video here. People are outside of their cars. You're right, Ed. We'll see how long that lasts, the social distancing. But people, you can feel the energy and the joy from people who were supporting Joe Biden.
And President Trump himself had a chance to see those people as he was riding in his motorcade back from his golf game in Sterling, Virginia. He actually rode past the crowds who made a variety of hand signals as he drove by. So
a variety of hand
signals. Waving. They were waving.
What did you do?
He looked out the window. He looked a little stricken in the pictures that we saw of him gazing out the window, really sort of being confronted by the jubilation you saw in Washington, D.C., which of course is a city that went for Joe Biden something like 93-6.
Traditionally, at a moment like this, every 4 years, the president-elect has heard from their running mate, a phone call that is placed to say congratulations on a hard-fought race, and I look forward to helping you in any way possible. That has happened in the past when even incumbent presidents have lost to challengers. Let's check in with CBS's Weijia Zhang, who is at the White House. And Weijia, any indication that President Trump has called Joe Biden?
Nora, absolutely not. The only certainty about covering this president is that he is not traditional, and that is certainly going to last throughout his presidency. I believe certainly with regard to whether he will call Joe Biden. He was on the golf course today when the entire world found out that Joe Biden had won, and Mr. Trump hasn't made any public appearances or remarks, but he did issue a statement through his campaign to say the election is not over. He also continued to peddle conspiracy theories about fraudulent voting on Twitter while falsely claiming that he won the race by a lot. A senior campaign advisor tells us that President Trump is frustrated but in a fighting mood, and they still believe they have a path to victory through lawsuits in Pennsylvania. But advisors have not been able to answer how the president could possibly make up his deficit in ballots. We are told, though, by two senior administration officials tonight that if the president exhausts all his legal options and that does not move the final tally, President Trump will concede to Biden. But they also added it's way too soon to say that he will also invite his successor to the White House to meet before inauguration, which is a tradition. Now, we should mention we have not heard from the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, at all today because we have learned he tested positive for COVID-19 along with 4 other White House staffers and a campaign aide. The president has not talked about the spike we are seeing across the country or what he plans to do about it, Nora, as he is inside the White House, very likely watching to see what Joe Biden is about to say.
Thank you, Weijia Zhang. Incredible to think about what is transpiring, the historical significance of that, and also that the president's own chief of staff is now suffering from coronavirus after being out on the campaign trail with him and also holding a reception at the White House when it is believed he may have been infectious with COVID-19. Let's go now to CBS's Jeff Pegues. He is with the crowds in Black Lives Matter Plaza near the White House, where I understand, Jeff, they're singing.
They are singing despite the mask. All the talk, obviously, about COVID-19. This is a huge celebration out here, Nora. People have been gathering through the day on Black Lives Matter Plaza, and they're trying to send a message to the current president. If you look up here, you see this eviction notice? This group wants to make sure that he sees that. You have thousands of people here. There are police officers here too, but they're mostly on the perimeter just observing. Because for the most part here, this has been a peaceful demonstration, a peaceful celebration, if you will. Beyond these barricades, you have a celebration that stretches farther down the street. And perhaps you can make out the White House down the block. It's about 3 blocks away. The people in this crowd, they want to make sure that the president doesn't get any sleep tonight. We hear singing, we hear drums, we hear fireworks. Nora.
I hear Stevie Wonder, too, Jeff Pegues. I hear that. But when I look at that Black Lives Matter plaza, it reminds me again about John Lewis. I talked to someone who was with John Lewis when he passed away. And he said it's a bittersweet day because this is what John Lewis wanted more than anything, to see Donald Trump out of the White House. He did not think that this president deserve the office. He felt that he brought great disrespect to the office. He said, in some ways, it feels very bittersweet. He said, it hit him today that John Lewis's death became a galvanizing moment for many people who registered to vote. When John Lewis encouraged people, please register to vote. We've got to do something about Donald Trump in the White House. He said, so to see this come on this particular day means everything to people who loved and cared about John Lewis.
John Lewis embodied not only in his actions and in his nonviolent protests, something that he wrote in that New York Times op-ed that was published after his death when he said, the vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. Also him making the case, democracy is not a state, it is an act. And the best way to engage in democracy is your vote. And what we saw in this year, 2020, which has been the most difficult year for so many Americans, this unbridled optimism about democracy and doing it by the power of their vote. And what we have is more Americans voting than ever before in a presidential election.
On
the
both
tally
sides.
Now, yes,
On both
almost
sides.
145 million, whether by mail-in ballot or even at the polls, in order to exercise that really unique role that we have as Americans.
But a lot of them voted because they were afraid of what Joe Biden was going to bring to the White House. And we see all of these celebrations. There are a lot of people who are nervous and who are as nervous as many of the people celebrating tonight felt in 2016. And it is a big challenge for the vice president and for all Democratic lawmakers to embrace the celebration and all the reason they're happy, but recognize that we have had a back and forth in American life where the celebrations of one side have set in the feelings of the other. And
but
that's
at least
one of
the difference, John, at least the difference here is the President-elect Joe Biden is letting that side know, I want to work with you. I'm going to be your president, too, and I want us to be united. That's not something that people got in 2016. He is extending the hand.
Sure, well, there's no question, but it exists, and it's not something you can just cure with a speech.
That's right.
And what you see are some fireworks in Washington over Black Lives Matter Plaza. Tonight's going to be full of fireworks, not only in Washington there, but also in Wilmington, Delaware, after we hear from Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who will introduce the president-elect, and that is coming just moments from now. And of course, we will bring that to you live. I want to bring in CBS's Mola Lenghi because he is at Washington Square Park in the heart of New York's Greenwich Village. And Mola, set the scenes there.
Well, Nora, obviously, from the moment the news broke today, people flooded the streets here in New York, began celebrating, and they've been going at it really ever since. As you can see here in Washington Square Park, folks have filled this park here. I overheard one woman tell another woman, 2020 needed this. 2020 needed this is what she said. And that might give you a sense of just how so many of these folks feel. We're seeing signs, we're seeing shirts that say things like dump Trump or out now. Which might be an interesting illustration of something interesting that we're seeing and we're hearing. A lot of what we're hearing out here, the chanting, the yelling, the singing, the screaming, has just as much to do with people who are excited about the fact that Donald Trump will no longer be president, as much as the prospect of a Joe Biden administration. I asked 30 people here over the last hour. 16 of them told me they were just happy that Donald Trump was out. 14 told me it was a combination of the two, and 2 people said they were out here celebrating the fact that Joe Biden was going to be president. Obviously, that is anecdotal. It is a microscopic sampling in a very liberal city, but it gives you an idea of what is animating a lot of the excitement here in New York City. Nora?
Mola Lenghi, thank you. With the crowds here in New York City, as we show you the crowds in Wilmington, Delaware, and that have turned out in their cars to listen to the president-elect and the vice president-elect in their remarks in this historic night. We will not only have the oldest president in American history, Joe Biden will be 78 when he takes the office, but as Nancy mentioned earlier, the first woman ever to be vice president of the United States, the first black, the first Indian, and the first daughter of immigrants, which resonates with so many Americans as the children of immigrants who have come to this country. And at the same time, we should acknowledge those who may have a sense of trepidation, who did not vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that voted for the Trump-Pence ticket. And yet, this is a president-elect who has signaled in every single one of his remarks this week that he wants to be not the president of the blue states or the red states, but of the United States of America. And that's the task. In many ways, he has already written what will be the success of his legacy. Can he help try and heal this country?
And Gail talked about his hand being extended. So far, the hand is not being accepted on Capitol Hill. We've heard from just 6 House Republicans so far today congratulating the president-elect, 1 Senate Republican. Obviously, they are
Was it Mitch McConnell?
It was not. Total silence from Mitch McConnell and
Does that
his aides
surprise you,
today.
Nancy, that we haven't heard from Mitch McConnell?
It does
would
surprise
set
me,
such a tone, wouldn't it?
Because
if he
it is
said
now,
something?
it's now been half a day, and we haven't heard anything from him. And I just want to contrast this to what we heard 4 years ago from Hillary Clinton, who had a big surprise loss. And within 12 hours, she gave a concession speech in which she said, we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead. And then, of course, devastated Democrats took their cues from her and they congratulated Donald Trump as well, even though they had that trepidation that you've described so eloquently. This time around, Republicans are taking their cue from their leader, Donald Trump. And what he's saying is that he thinks that this election was a fraud, that he thinks that these votes were illegitimate, which, by the way, is something he has said multiple times in the past, not just in his election against Hillary Clinton, but even in primary states that he lost. After the Iowa caucuses, when he lost to Ted Cruz, he said the election was a fraud. And Ted Cruz won illegitimately. So this is something.
He also said, though, that even before this election, that if I lose, that it was an illegitimate election and that it was a fraud. But you said there was 1 Senate Republican. Who was it?
That was Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney
of Utah.
And Ed has some details that we're learning from the Wilmington, Delaware, about Biden and Harris.
Yeah. So that, first of all, that massive flag that you may see there hanging off of the construction equipment, I'm told, is about the size of a basketball field. It's a pretty impressive. Biden campaign.
Basketball court or a football field?
Did I say basketball field?
Yeah.
Basketball court, because it's next to a baseball field named where the Wilmington Blue Rocks play. And this is the parking lot of that baseball stadium next to that convention center. And the large building there is a place that I think the Biden press corps is going to get to know pretty well. It's the Westin Hotel of Delaware, one of the better options in that town. 360 cars are here, many of them red, white, and blue, American-made Jeeps, it looks like. Thousands in attendance. Everyone's been encouraged to wear masks. Everyone has been encouraged to keep their social distance. As we can see, there's some of that going on. And they handed out the American flags earlier today. Thousands have descended on the place throughout the day to catch a glimpse of this from beyond the security barrier. And this stage has been set essentially since last weekend, when they began putting it up, hoping that he would be able to address the world early Wednesday morning, and he's had to wait until tonight.
I mean, for anybody who's been to a football game, it looks kind of like a tailgate party in many ways.
Yeah, it does.
Outside, as people have brought their cars in. Very different than most nights like this that we usually see every 4 years, where you have a number of crowds packed in and they are trying to do this in a celebratory way, although I see people with their masks pulled down on their cheeks, but outside and in the warm weather.
And many of these people, like us, have been on call all week. They live in and around Wilmington, and they were ready to go at a moment's notice.
But we're not complaining about being on call.
We're not. No.
We like being on call for this story.
This has been riveting. But for these folks, it's been a little stressful because they were told they would likely get a little bit of an advance notice to show up if it was announced Thursday night or Friday afternoon.
I'm told we're just about 5 minutes away from hearing from Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, as well as the President-elect Joe Biden. We'll see their families. There'll be fireworks, some music, all of that ahead. I just want to check in briefly with CBS's David Begnaud. He is just where we are in Times Square, just outside of our studio. And David, I understand large crowds as well. I saw them earlier.
Thousands of people. Nora Gale got it right when she said this feels like a victory celebration for a baseball team, a football team. It reminds me of Mardi Gras. If you've been to a parade, that's what it feels like, a big old celebration. James and Karina, boyfriend and girlfriend, here in Times Square, literally watching and waiting for the speech to air. Your reaction, I know you were in your high-rise building here in New York City. What happened? How did you first realize that something was going on?
Well, our window was open, and so we started hearing all this yelling and clapping and banging on pots and pans. And when we realized, Biden has been elected, we both just started crying, and we hugged each other.
And cried, and it was a really overwhelming. It's been such a stressful not to mention just a couple of months and years, but these past few days have just been that much more so. So it was a great sigh of relief once we realized that it's beginning to change the corner. The nation itself could begin to heal, God willing, and hopefully I think this is a good starting chapter.
When you speak of healing, do you believe that Joe Biden will be able to bring about a healing in the country?
I do believe so. I mean, he's done it in years past, for the years that he's been working.
Excuse me just one second. Got to go to the president-elect. Nora, back to you.
All right, David Begnaud, thank you. And it almost kind of feels like New Year's Eve, talking to people who are gathered outside, and that sense of excitement.
It sure was a slow ball drop, too. I mean, over the last few days. But you know what? We've
John, how do you do that with a straight face? Honestly, because it's so off the cuff, and you do it so effortlessly.
Thank you, Gail. Now I'm embarrassed. I can't say the next thing. But so we said football game, New Year's Eve, all that. But speaking to people today, VJ Day in Times Square, there's that famous photograph of the kiss in Times Square. There are people who describe a kind of release and that comes not just from their guy Joe winning, but from something that they have felt constricted by over the last few years. These are, of course, the people who are happy to see Joe Biden elected. But that I've never heard in politics, this sense of emotional release on an election day or at the end of an election.
And it is very emotional. That's a really good way to describe it. What you feel when you walk around and talk to the people and look at the people and hear the people, it is extremely emotional for everyone.
And it's actually happening all around the world.
Exactly,
not just here in the United States. I mean, we've heard statements from world leaders and former world leaders who are a little less constrained about what they say. They have to be less diplomatic, who say that, they're very relieved to see the outcome that we've witnessed.
I hear music, Nora.
That's right. The program is beginning. Let's listen in as we're about to hear from the Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris.
Science.
Please welcome the Vice President-elect of the United States of America, Kamala Harris.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. So, thank you. Good evening. So, Congressman John Lewis, before his passing, wrote, "Democracy is not a state, it is an act." And what he meant was that America's democracy is not guaranteed. It is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. To guard it and never take it for granted. And protecting our democracy takes struggle. It takes sacrifice, but there is joy in it, and there is progress, because we, the people, have the power to build a better future. And when our very democracy was on the ballot in this election, with the very soul of America at stake, and the world watching, you ushered in a new day for America. To our campaign staff and volunteers, this extraordinary team, thank you for bringing more people than ever before into the democratic process. And for making this victory possible. To the poll workers and election officials across our country who have worked tirelessly to make sure every vote is counted, our nation owes you a debt of gratitude. You have protected the integrity of our democracy. And to the American people who make up our beautiful country, thank you for turning out in record numbers to make your voices heard. And I know times have been challenging, especially the last several months. The grief, sorrow, and pain, the worries and the struggles. But we have also witnessed your courage, your resilience, and the generosity of your spirit. For 4 years, you marched and organized for equality and justice, for our lives and for our planet. And then you voted. And you delivered a clear message. You chose hope and unity, decency, science, and yes, truth. You chose Joe Biden as the next president of the United States of America. And Joe is a healer, a uniter, a tested and steady hand, a person whose own experience of loss gives him a sense of purpose that will help us as a nation reclaim our own sense of purpose. And a man with a big heart who loves with abandon. It's his love for Jill, who will be an incredible First Lady. It's his love for Hunter and Ashley and his grandchildren and the entire Biden family. And while I first knew Joe as vice president, I really got to know him as the father who loved Bo, my dear friend who we remember here today. And to my husband, Doug, and our children, Cole and Ella, and my sister Maya, and our whole family, I love you all more than I can ever express. We are so grateful to Joe and Jill for welcoming our family into theirs on this incredible journey. And to the woman most responsible for my presence here today, my mother, Kamala Harris, who is always in our hearts. When she came here from India at the age of 19, she maybe didn't quite imagine this moment, but she believed so deeply in an America where a moment like this is possible. And so I am thinking about her and about the generations of women, Black women, Asian, white, Latina, Native American women who throughout our nation's history have paved the way for this moment tonight. Women who fought and sacrificed so much for equality and liberty and justice for all, including the Black women who are often, too often, overlooked, but so often prove they are the backbone of our democracy. all the women who have worked to secure and protect the right to vote for over a century, 100 years ago with the 19th Amendment, 55 years ago with the Voting Rights Act, and now in 2020 with a new generation of women in our country who cast their ballots and continued the fight for their fundamental right to vote and be heard. Tonight I reflect on their struggle, their determination, and the strength of their vision to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And I stand on their shoulders. And what a testament it is to Joe's character that he had the audacity to break one of the most substantial barriers that exists in our country and select a woman as his vice president. But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last. Because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. And to the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourselves in a way that others may not, simply because they've never seen it before. But know that we will applaud you every step of the way. And to the American people, no matter who you voted for, I will strive to be a vice president, like Joe was to President Obama, loyal, honest, and prepared, waking up every day thinking of you and your family. Because now is when the real work begins, the hard work, the necessary work, the good work, the essential work to save lives and beat this epidemic, to rebuild our economy so it works for working people, to root out systemic racism in our justice system and society, to combat the climate crisis, to unite our country and heal the soul of our nation. And the road ahead will not be easy, but America is ready. And so are Joe and I. We have elected a president who represents the best in us, a leader the world will respect and our children will look up to, a commander-in-chief who will respect our troops and keep our country safe, and a president for all Americans. And it is now my great honor to introduce the President-elect of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Hello. My fellow Americans. And the people who brought me to the dance, Delawareans. I see my buddy Senator Tom Carper down there, and I think Senator Coons is there, and I think the governor's around. Is that Ruth Ann? And that former Governor Ruth Ann Minner. Most importantly, my sisters-in-law and my sister Valerie. Anyway. Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation. 74 million. What I must admit has surprised me. Tonight, we're seeing all over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country, indeed across the world, an outpouring of joy, of hope, renewed faith in tomorrow, bring a better day. And I'm humbled by the trust and confidence you've placed in me. I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify, who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States. And work with all my heart, with the confidence of the whole people, to win the confidence of all of you. And for that is what America, I believe, is about. It's about people. And that's what our administration will be all about. I sought this office to restore the soul of America, to rebuild the backbone of this nation, the middle class, and to make America respected around the world again, and to unite us here at home. It's the honor of my lifetime that so many millions of Americans have voted for that vision. And now, the work of making that vision is real. It's a task, the task of our time. Folks, as I said many times before, I'm Jill's husband. And I would not be here without her love and tireless support of Jill and my son Hunter and Ashley, my daughter, and all our grandchildren and their spouses and all our family. They're my heart. Jill's a mom, a military mom, an educator. And she has dedicated her life to education. But teaching isn't just what she does, it's who she is. For American educators, this is a great day for y'all. You're going to have one of your own in the White House. And Jill's going to make a great First Lady. I'm so proud of her. And I'll have the honor of serving with the fantastic Vice President who you just heard from, Kamala Harris, who makes history as the first woman, first black woman, the first woman from South Asian descent, the first daughter of an immigrant ever elected in this country. Don't tell me it's not possible in the United States. It's long overdue. And we're reminded tonight of those who fought so hard for so many years to make this happen. But once again, America's bent the arc of the moral universe more toward justice. Kamala, Doug, like it or not, your family, you become an honorary Biden, there's no way out. To all those of you who volunteered and worked the polls in the middle of this pandemic, local elected officials, you deserve a special thanks from the entire nation. And to my campaign team and all the volunteers and all who gave so much of themselves to make this moment possible, I owe you. I owe you. I owe you everything. And to all those who supported us, I'm proud of the campaign we built and ran. I'm proud of the coalition we put together, the broadest and most diverse coalition in history. Democrats, Republicans, independents, progressives, moderates, conservatives, young, old, urban, suburban, rural, gay, straight, transgender, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. I mean it, especially those moments, and especially for those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb. The African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours. I said at the outset, I wanted to represent this campaign to represent and look like America. We've done that. Now that's what I want the administration to look like and act like. For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans. They're Americans. The Bible tells us, to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap and a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America. Now this campaign is over. What is the will of the people? What is our mandate? I believe it's this. Americans have called upon us to marshal the forces of decency, the forces of fairness, to marshal the forces of science and the forces of hope in the great battles of our time. The battle to control the virus, the battle to build prosperity, the battle to secure your family's health care, the battle to achieve racial justice and root out systemic racism in this country, and the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control, the battle to restore decency, defend democracy, and give everybody in this country a fair shot. That's all they're asking for, a fair shot. Folks, our work begins with getting COVID under control. We cannot repair the economy, restore our vitality, or relish life's most precious moments, hugging our grandchildren, our children, our birthdays, weddings, graduations, all the moments that matter most to us until we get it under control. On Monday, I will name a group of leading scientists and experts as transition advisors to help take the Biden-Harris COVID plan and convert it into an action blueprint that will start on January the 20th, 2021. That plan will be built on bedrock science. It will be constructed out of compassion, empathy, and concern. I will spare no effort, none, or any commitment to turn around this pandemic. Folks, I'm a proud Democrat, but I will govern as an American president. I'll work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as those who did. Let this grim era of demonization in America begin to end here and now. The refusal of Democrats and Republicans to cooperate with one another, it's not some mysterious force beyond our control. It's a decision, a choice we make. And if we can decide not to cooperate, then we can decide to cooperate. And I believe that this is part of the mandate given to us from the American people. They want us to cooperate in their interest. And that's the choice I'll make. And I'll call on Congress, Democrats and Republicans alike, to make that choice with me. The American story is about slow yet steadily widening the opportunities in America. And make no mistake, too many dreams have been deferred for too long. We must make the promise of the country real for everybody, no matter their race, their ethnicity, their faith, their identity, or their disability. Folks, America has always been shaped by inflection points, by moments in time where we've made hard decisions about who we are and what we want to be. Lincoln in 1860, coming to save the Union. FDR in 1932, promising a beleaguered country a new deal. JFK in 1960, pledging a new frontier. And 12 years ago, when Barack Obama made history, he told us, yes, we can. Well, folks, we stand at an inflection point. We have an opportunity to defeat despair, to build a nation of prosperity and purpose. We can do it. I know we can. I've long talked about the battle for the soul of America. We must restore the soul of America. Our nation is shaped by the constant battle between our better angels and our darkest impulses. And what presidents say in this battle matters. It's time for our better angels to prevail. Tonight, the whole world is watching America. And I believe at our best, America is a beacon for the globe. We will lead not only by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. I've always believed, many of you heard me say it, I've always believed we can define America in one word: possibilities. That in America, everyone should be given an opportunity to go as far as their dreams and God-given ability will take them. You see, I believe in the possibilities of this country. We're always looking ahead to an America that's freer and more just, ahead to an America that creates jobs with dignity and respect, ahead of America that cures diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, ahead to an America that never leaves anyone behind, ahead of America that never gives up, never gives in. This is a great nation. It's always been a bad bet to bet against America. We're a good people. This is the United States of America, and there's never been anything we've been not able to do when we've done it together. Folks, in the last days of the campaign, I began thinking about a hymn that means a lot to me and my family, particularly my deceased son, Bo. It captures the faith that sustains me and which I believe sustains America. And I hope it can provide some comfort and solace the 230,000 Americans who've lost a loved one to this terrible virus this year. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. Hopefully this hymn gives you solace as well. And it goes like this: and he will raise you up on eagle's wings, bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. And now together, on eagle's wings, we embark on the work that God and history have called upon us to do. With full hearts and steady hands, with faith in America and in each other, with love of country, a thirst for justice, let us be the nation that we know we can be. A nation united, a nation strengthened, a nation healed. The United States of America, ladies and gentlemen, there's never been anything we've tried we've not been able to do. So remember, as our grandpapa used to say when I walked out of his home when I was a kid up in Scranton, he said, "Joey, keep the faith." And our grandmother, when she was alive, she yelled, "No, Joey, spread it. Spread the faith. God love you all. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops." Thank you, thank you, thank you.
And there you see the family of President-elect Joe Biden, his large family, along with the family of Kamala Harris, the Vice President-elect, all gathered there on the stage celebrating with fireworks after what has been a week-long election, after Election Day, waiting for the answer from many of these states. And Joe Biden giving what might be one of the best speeches of his lifetime, encapsulating the moment, I think, in the words, "This is a time to heal in America." And I think he's speaking literally about the coronavirus, saying that that will be his first act, but also politically speaking as well about healing the deep divisions in this country that exist.
Saying your opponents are not your enemies. We are all Americans. Let's give each other a chance and lower the temperature. I already like the tone he's setting, John, already.
And just adding the see each other again, listen to each other again. So that's the it's not just words, but actually putting them into action. The speech really ranged. You had Langston Hughes reference in there on eagle's wings. He quoted Minister Theodore Parker with the bending of the moral universe, which Barack Obama used quite often, certainly Martin Luther King. It was again, this is what speech making sounds like, and President Trump just hasn't spoken like this, hasn't chosen to, and this was a speech that seeks to use the words in the moment to bring the nation together and move it along. Words can't do everything in a presidency, but they can do a lot.
And to say that he wants to root out systemic racism. Do you know how long people have been waiting for someone in that position to say that, to acknowledge, A, that it exists, and then to acknowledge we want to do something about it.
That it will
That's
be
very powerful.
That it will be a priority.
Exactly, Nora, and a priority.
Said to the black community, you had my back and I have yours.
The significance, too, of Joe Biden speaking of his loss, not only with his first wife, who was killed in a car accident, as well as his son, who died of glioblastoma, cancer, which many Americans know, the pain of losing someone from cancer, and then referencing that Catholic hymn, and he will raise you up on eagle's wings. Joe Biden becomes the only second Catholic to ever be elected President of the United States since John F. Kennedy. And so there is a resonance here as well.
And we'll have a church-going president again. Not since George W. Bush, really, have we had somebody who went to church on Sundays with regularity. We should probably reflect on the sort of modern family-looking group of people up there on stage. We saw Biden's son, Hunter, who we have not seen in public at all over the course of this campaign, who's there.
Holding his new grandchild.
Hunter, yes.
The president-elect is holding his.
Yes, and then he has now a total of 7 grandchildren. Natalie, Robert, Maisie, Finnegan, Naomi. Another child that was born to another woman with Hunter, and then the youngest there with his new wife, Melissa. Kamala Harris, those young children, one of them is Amara, her niece. There was a video shot, actually her grandniece. Her niece shot video of them talking the other day about how that 4-year-old could one day become president.
She was sitting on her lap. It was a very cute video. Yes. Yeah, people should look at that.
And Kamala Harris mentioned her stepchildren, Cole and Ella, who are Doug Emhoff's children. And the senator, or the vice president-elect, is actually very good friends with Emhoff's former wife. They're all friendly back in Los Angeles. But these are faces and names we'll get to know over the next few years as they take office.
I mean, when you talk about, filling your cabinet with people that look like America, that's what that stage looks like right now. Look at the range of color, the range of age, male, female. It really is a beautiful sight to see them all there together. And I love when he said to Kamala Harris, you're now a Biden, like it or not. You're now a Biden for life, like it or not.
You get the feeling he would want to deputize the whole country into that, given what he really wants to do.
Embrace us, yeah.
Well, there is something that always strikes me about Joe Biden, given that he has had 47 years in public life and has been busy, is that he calls his children every single day. He calls most of his grandchildren every single day.
Just to say hey?
Just to say hey.
Oh,
yeah, I know you text with your kids every day and send pictures and stuff too.
But those of us with teenagers don't get a response.
Yeah, exactly.
It's temporary, John. It's temporary.
There's something unique about really that diligence with which he loves and cares for his family. And it was really something actually that you heard now Vice President-elect Harris mention in her remarks about the decency that embodies Joe Biden. It's a word he used too, to marshal the forces of decency. They both had similar words that they used: decency, truth, healer, uniter. That is
science.
Yeah.
They both emphasize science, which I thought was interesting.
And
Big nod to COVID.
It was a speech that was very true to Joe Biden.
Yes.
The reason it sounded so natural is because these are themes that he has sounded throughout his political career, including 36 years on Capitol Hill. He was always someone who was trying to make a deal, trying to reach out to the other side. In fact, some Democrats were frustrated with him when he was vice president because they felt he was too eager to reach out to the other side and make a deal. I was just reading a quote from a Republican in Congress from a few years ago who said, "I don't always agree with him, but I do trust him implicitly. He doesn't break his word. He doesn't waste time telling me why I'm wrong. He gets down to brass tacks and keeps sight of the stakes." You know who said that?
Who?
Mitch McConnell.
Oh, win, Nancy, win.
It's in the long game. Yeah.
Yeah. In the book. I
was going to say, John, how did you know that?
He knows
You know that John
everything. He reads
Dickerson.
everything.
I that encyclopedic
Dickerson.
mind again. Here's another first in the Biden White House. Biden's dog Major will be the first shelter pup to live in the White House. I don't know what kind of dog Major is. John Dickerson, what kind of dog is Major?
I know, he's a German Shepherd. The Bidens have always had German Shepherds.
They have?
Yes.
Okay.
And so,
By the way, I was keeping count. He said folks 7 times.
But no
malarkey. No malarkey tonight.
once.
That's right.
He threw a y'all in there as well.
you know, I found the phrase that I was looking for, Vice President-elect's phrase about Joe Biden. She said he is a man with a big heart who loves without abandon.
Yes.
And he certainly has done that with his family and through his career as a public servant. And that will be his task, is to love with abandon those who disagree with him vehemently, and the direction that perhaps he wants to take the country, and feel sort of stuck in their ways about what they believe, and the distrust that has really come to embody our politics, that you can, for some reason it's extended beyond what you believe, that you can't trust the other person.
It's interesting that we're sitting here at Times Square. You can hear the roar of the crowd as we're sitting in the building. You could hear the applause. The car horns have gotten louder now that it's over. I mean, you feel it's a big celebration right outside of our walls. Mm-hmm. I like, too, that he mentioned again he will work just as hard for those who didn't work for me. I will work just as hard for you. Again, he keeps extending that branch to say, I'm here for you and want to work with you. I think that's a very important message to send. And you can't say it enough. You can't say it enough, because we are deeply divided. We sit here tonight as a nation.
And of course, saying it isn't enough,
yes,
which is to say, you know, but I think behind these words, whether it actually works out this way in his presidency or not, behind them is the struggle to at least get caught trying to reach out. And that's, you know, anybody can put words on a page, but he really, and in fact was penalized by this in the Democratic primaries for this idea that you have to reach out to get anything done. And sometimes have to reach out and work with people you might not think are the most swell people in the world, but that's the way you make progress.
But I say again, John, just the fact that he chose Kamala Harris, we talked about this afternoon, after he felt slighted by her during the debate. He was clearly very irritated, felt that, you know, many people thought that it was a low blow. But you could see that he got past that because he chose what he felt was best for him and what was best for the country. I think that speaks volumes about who he is as a person. There are many people that would not be able to get past that, but he did.
And there's no one who understands better how important having that rapport with your running mate is, because he did that for 8 years for President Obama, who also extended the olive branch many times. You know, remember the beer summit, you know, kept trying to go back to Capitol Hill, but actually got rather disillusioned towards the end of his presidency and didn't feel like he was getting the same goodwill and response. He said it was like, you know, you're digging the ditch and you've got, you know, the rest of the construction crew standing there at the edge saying, dig more, instead of jumping in to help. And
well, he has a new book coming out in a couple weeks. We can hear more about that. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, this is Barack Obama's book.
Yeah, Barack Obama's book, to see if we can get the inside scoop. But
There you see Times Square and the celebration as thousands have gathered at what's called the crossroads of the world to mark this moment. It's as if
those are live pictures right now.
That's right.
That's happening right now.
It's as if in some ways the pandemic has ended, which it has not, but people feel that sense of that they want to rush to the scene of where other people are to join in the celebration of the election of the 46th President of the United States. And I think there's not only a sense of excitement about that, but I also think, Kamala Harris said that the audacity of Joe Biden to choose a woman. But I think there was also something pragmatic about that as well. I mean, not just the audacity of it. I think that the president-elect has been surrounded by strong women, including his sister.
Mm-hmm. And I remember, I believe there's a congresswoman from Delaware, Lisa Blunt Rochester, who told our Bo Erickson vice presidential selection process that at the beginning, before he even ran, he told her he would likely pick a woman as his running mate because he understood that it was time for that threshold to be crossed. So it was always in the back of his mind. He surprised everyone in March, right as the pandemic was beginning, in his final primary debate with Bernie Sanders by announcing that he would do it, and immediately faced pressure to pick a woman of color, and understanding that there was an opportunity given that Kamala Harris was in the race.
And what was going on in the country at the time,
right.
too.
He, in the process, elevated several women of color in his party who are now household names, at least to those who watch a lot of TV news. Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta, Val Demings of Florida, people who were not well known, but he helped elevate. And that is part of what his administration plans to do, is to put people in positions. He has said it, but he means it, and his aides tell us he means it. He will put people in positions of power that have not been in those kinds of positions before, because he wants the country to understand and accept that people like that can be working in government.
And I thought he was actually very explicit about that right at the start of his speech tonight, saying the African American community has always had my back, and now it's my turn to have yours. It's a real recognition, some would say an overdue recognition, that African Americans and African American women in particular have delivered victories for Democrats time and time again, and perhaps have not gotten the recognition and the respect that they deserved for that reliability.
Since 1976, 80% of African American women have voted for the Democratic presidential candidate every time. No other block of voters has been that loyal to a Democratic presidential candidate each time. He understood that.
And certainly propelled his victory not only in the primary, but also backed him in the general election as well. We want to bring in Senator Chris Coons, a close friend of the new president-elect. He holds the Senate seat that Joe Biden once held. Good evening, Senator Coons, and thank you so much for joining us, especially on this momentous occasion. And I guess, have the fireworks already stopped?
Nora, it's been an amazing evening. I think Joe gave a powerful, a moving speech. And to see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on this stage behind me just a few moments ago brought tears to many eyes here in Wilmington, Delaware, and hope to many hearts all across our nation.
I know you've spoken with him. Just how ambitious is his agenda even before he moves into the White House?
Well, as you know, bringing our country together in this moment of deep division, getting us out of this pandemic, rebuilding our economy so it's more just and sustainable, and restoring our place in the world, that's a fairly ambitious agenda. That's what Joe's been running on since he announced in April of last year, and I think he is exactly the right leader to deliver on that ambitious agenda for our nation this coming year.
And have you been able to speak with him today? Do you know if he's going to reach out to President Trump, or is he waiting first to hear from him? What's your sense of that?
I don't know whether he will reach out first, but as you heard in his speech tonight, and as you've heard from him all along the campaign trail, Joe is someone who believes deeply in healing the divisions in this country, in bringing us together. So I expect that he'll be reaching out in a variety of ways to Republican leaders, to Americans of all backgrounds and political persuasions.
Senator Coons, it's John Dickerson here. You have a lot of relationships with Republicans that you've tended for in a variety of different ways. Have you heard from any Republicans? There's been not much well-wishing of the president-elect. Have you heard from any Republicans privately or otherwise about their feelings?
Absolutely. I've spoken to about a dozen of my colleagues, some by text, most by phone in recent days. Initially, a number of us were calling each other to offer congratulations on being reelected or condolences on being unsuccessful. And in talking to Democratic and Republican senators alike, there's a passion for moving forward, for getting things done in Congress, for responding to the real needs of our constituents. This has been one of the most divisive elections of my lifetime, and recent years in the Senate has been profoundly unsatisfying to senators of both parties because we know we haven't addressed the needs of middle America. So I'm optimistic that the senators who've served with Joe for many years, who've known him as a senator and vice president, know his character, know his heart, and are going to be willing to risk working across the aisle with a Biden administration, a Biden-Harris administration.
Senator, do you think they will risk reaching across the aisle now to hasten this moment of unity that you're talking about by saying something congratulating the president-elect?
I hope so. Look, I've been disappointed many times in the ways in which my colleagues have not stood up to President Trump, those who privately have expressed grave concern about things he's done that have been unconventional or have violated some of the important traditions of our nation. This is a moment for all of us to come together to support the president-elect and the vice president-elect, but more importantly, to support the American people. You heard in Joe's remarks tonight that his hope, his ambition is to lead as an American president, not a Democratic president. And we have an opportunity to do that now. And I'm hopeful my colleagues of all backgrounds, Democrat, Independent, and Republican in the Senate will come forward and do that.
Senator Coates, I agree with you. It's Gayle King speaking when you said you think it's one of the best speeches he's ever given. There were so many highlights, if you will, but as someone who has known him for such a long time, can you share with us what this moment means to him? It's true when they say third time's the charm, it seems, for your friend tonight.
But Gayle, as you know, this is the moment that Joe Biden was made for. This was the moment that all the ups and downs of his life, the tragedies and losses, the successes and the soaring accomplishments, all of it came together in this election, in this moment. We're in the middle of a terrible pandemic where more than 100,000 Americans have been infected each of the last 3 days. We need a president who's compassionate, who can reach across the aisle, who can listen to science, and who can get us out of our current challenges. Joe has run twice before, but this is the moment that he was built for because of his optimism, his deep belief in the American people. You heard his message tonight of confidence that we can do things together. That's, I think, just the right note to hit in this challenging time in our nation. And Kamala Harris is just the right person to lead alongside him as vice president.
I don't know if you've had a chance to look at your TV this afternoon, but I described it as a nationwide block party. You can really see the exuberance and the bliss of people in the streets. What does that say to you? Of course, the Trump supporters are not happy tonight. We understand that, too, and acknowledge the power that Donald Trump has among the people who supported him. But what does it say to you when you look at the people celebrating in the streets the way they are in this country tonight?
Well, I think the joy that I heard here in Delaware wasn't just for Republicans or Democrats. It was really about our democracy working and moving forward. The last 4 days have been long, and people have been patient. And 150 million Americans, roughly, came out to vote in this election. And think about it. The ways in which we have shown as a nation our confidence in our system, in our democracy, and the ways in which the elation, the jubilation, the dancing in the streets that you're talking about, Gayle, that's an expression of joyfulness and of hopefulness about what is possible with the leadership of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and with the willingness to work together.
Senator Coons, it's Nancy Cordes. Good to see you. You talked a minute ago about the need to restore the nation's place in the world. Well, you've been mentioned several times as someone who might be on the president-elect's shortlist for Secretary of State.
Yes.
So is that a position you'd be interested in? What qualities would you like to see in the next Secretary of State?
Well, Nancy, as you know, I've worked hard in the last decade to bridge the differences in the Senate. And I think Joe is perfectly positioned to be the person to help bridge some of the real challenges in the world. the best way that we can be a successful nation on the world stage is to heal our democracy here at home. And whether Joe asks me to be a part of that work in the Senate or in another way as a part of his administration, I'd be honored to do so. He has a number of very talented people right around him who've served with him many years from whom he could choose. But if I got that opportunity, it'd be the honor of a lifetime.
All right, Senator Coons, thank you so much for joining us as we wrap up there from Wilmington, Delaware, just as we heard the president-elect saying that he pledges to be an American who will seek not to divide, but to unify. There's a lot more ahead. We'll check in with our correspondents at the celebrations around the country as we continue our coverage of the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris right here on CBS News.
Dun, dun, dun. Come make a wish, then make them bounce. Pride on your lips, come make that sound. Drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it, drop it. You gotta work it, work it, work it, work it, work it.